Here's the final one, and I thought 7 to 9. What's really important? It's not just Changez's distaste for America. It's also a kind of reconnection, a reaffirmation of his love of his homeland, invoked through feelings of love for his family, the desire to protect older parents, guilt to be leaving behind brothers who will have to fight in the conflict if war breaks out, and genuine anger at US foreign policy, like very violent bombing campaigns as well. So rather than these ideas, right, for your essays you have to choose a title. Out of all of the complexity of the novel, you need to find an angle that you could break down within 1,200 words max. So this is something that you might want to look at, which is manageable within that time, and is a very important part of Changez's characterization, that dynamic shift, that movement away from the America that he'd once fallen in love with. And so we'll see within these passages reaffirmation, but also he used to view his home country with a kind of disdain. He had co-opted maybe some of the snobbish attitudes of the American elites, and because he was so desperate to join that top echelon of financial society, he looks back with kind of embarrassment at his family home compared to the other, like Chuck and Mitch and all of the well-moneyed American elites who all have membership at the Ivy Dining Club and whatever. Anyway, okay. So one of the things that happens, you see this, you can look this up as well. So as a reaction to 9/11 and the trauma, played again and again and again, that people in America were worked up into a fervent state of indignation and patriotism, and then they revenged. So then it's the largest military the world has ever seen, and they brought all of that power to bear on places in their hunt for Osama bin Laden. So with ghostly night vision, you'll have seen this if you play like Medal of Honor or Call of Duty or one of these games. You put on night goggles, and so the green and black shadow infrared world, you can see potential targets being eliminated. I'm using euphemistic language there, which is what the American media and the generals did. The collateral damage means the dead civilians after your bombs fall on the wrong compound. So when Americans drop into Afghanistan, that's next to Pakistan. So all of a sudden, this invasion by your countrymen caused me to tremble with fury. And we can see his reaction is to turn to alcohol, and he drinks this fury away, but we know now that his character is primed to anti-American sentiment. It's starting to impede him at his work. He's normally so capable of focusing on the fundamentals of profit. But here we see, as he's talking to the American, about the pride of the cuisine, the pride of the culture, the occasional brilliance of our temperamental cricket team, the food, the hospitality is wonderful and world class. Now later on he uses this, he describes some of the ingredients, and he tries to intimidate the American, make him feel queasy and overwhelmed, sensory overload with some of the spiced brain. But he's talking with genuine pride about his country's cuisine, which is a massive indicator of any culture. What's the food like? What's the hospitality like? And he goes back, he says, we were not always burdened by debt, dependent on foreign aid and handouts. There's an amazing TED talk and book by John Perkins, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. So if you want to find out about how America is a colonial operator in the modern guise of just loading countries with debt so you can take your pound of flesh, that's what he talks about. So it's not like the British, Spanish, or the European colonization by simply force, except this does feel like it, right? They're going in there with assault squads and B-52 bombers and stealth bombers and all of the technical sophistry. But he remembers back, actually, like, well, Old Anakali Market is emblematic of the old high culture, the apex of Lahore, when the elephants used to be, sequined elephants used to come back with the emperors on top of them through Shalimar Gardens built in honour of the most beautiful princesses. They had all of this glorious history that's now been subjugated by the modern economy. So it's this affirmation that's starting to grow of where he's from, which is being fermented by, in America, this increasingly dangerous nostalgia. The flags, the uniforms, generals are addressing cameras in war rooms. So as this overt Americanism manifests itself, so Changez feels himself isolated within this context, and therefore he kind of starts to double down on his own original identity. He used to belong in New York, right? Now he finds himself as a foreigner staring out at a set. Jim is a good reader of character. Jim tries to help him. He notices his preoccupation. His mind's not fully on his work. And he knows, yeah, it's your Pakistani side. Something's on your mind, right? Is your family okay? So he's empathetic and understanding. But Jim is a particularly perceptive observer, but for most people in America, there's more often tales of discrimination of Muslims. So he's living in a very, very increasingly hostile climate. And these geopolitical tensions are made more manifest as well. So there are American troops, boots on the ground in Afghanistan, and some insurrectionists assault the Indian parliament. Well, it's very much like a precursor of what we're seeing with the tensions with India and Pakistan right now. These are two nuclear-armed states. They feel fierce rivalries between each other. And so if India were to attack, it's a much bigger country. It's 1.3 billion people, and it's a country with a longer history than the partition was 1947. But there's an existential threat to Changez's home. I was confronting the possibility my country could be at war, and that's where his family are. My mother told me not to come. My father said much the same, but I found myself bound to Lahore at the time when New Yorkers are busying themselves with last-minute purchases of Christmas trees. So at the moment of one of the great celebrations of American culture, this is when Changez is on a plane home. So that's literally, but also metaphorically, he's shifting his mindset. When he's on the plane, a man removed his shoes, much to my dismay. So he goes back, and he's conditioned, culturally conditioned. These people, it's kind of like it's too backward or whatever else. It's embarrassing. You're not acting like in a kind of like first world manner. But then he notices why is the guy doing this? He's doing it so he can begin to pray. Prays in the aisle that nuclear annihilation would be avoided if it was God's will. So I think there he's got this conflict. He identifies with the guy as well as being slightly embarrassed upon his behalf. And on the left-hand side, 124, you can see he goes back and he's got this American-centric mindset, this idea of observing. He looks back at his host culture. When I returned to Lahore that winter, war was in the offing. I was struck how shabby our house appeared. Cracks running through the ceilings, and I was saddened to find it in such a state. No more than saddened, I was shamed. But as I reacclimatized and my surroundings became familiar, it occurred to me that the house had not changed, I had changed. So he gets angry at himself, he stares at himself in the mirror, and he's angered by the person he sees looking back, who's prepared to judge his country, his people, his culture, his family so harshly. Now, that is an awakening. He undergoes this shift here. And on the right-hand side, this is all the happy stuff, because he starts to feel positivity again. When he looks with a different gaze, he saw his house properly again. He appreciates its enduring grandeur, its unmistakable personality, its idiosyncratic charm. Mughal miniatures, ancient carpets graced its reception rooms, and so on. So here, this is a reawakening of his affirmation for home. His brother comes to collect him. He feels protective of his vulnerable parents, and he's reminded here that his cousins and his brother, they have to dig in, they have to fight. There's an artillery battery being dug just half an hour from their home. My parents seemed well, but they were more frail when I'd seen them last. So he's wondering, well, where do I belong? Where should I be? My role here is to be back with my family. So we continue here, Afghanistan, helicopters again, but it becomes time for him soon to return to the US. But he feels a sense of powerlessness. He feels a sense of self-guilt as well. What kind of a man abandons his people in such circumstances? And what was I abandoning them for? We've talked about his increasing distaste with the values of corporate America, centered on profit above anything else. And on the flight, this is an important moment of self-reflection. He notices that many of his fellow passengers were similar to me in age, college students, young professionals, so vital, like the fittest, the brightest. And what are they doing? They're leaving. They're leaving the country where they should be needed the most. And I was filled with contempt for myself. I shut my eyes and waited, and the hours took from me the responsibility even to flee.